Jamb candidates, welcome to today's lesson, and today we are looking at sense organs. Sense what? Organs. Let's understand what sense organs are. So first of all, let's look at the definition of that, that general term, sense organs. Okay, a sense organ is an organ that senses a thing. Okay, it senses something. Okay, and how does it sense this thing? It senses it through a receptor because it contains a particular type of receptor. It could be chemoreceptor, it could be tactile receptor, it could be photoreceptor, it could be sonic receptor. Okay, that's the receptor for sound. Okay, so various receptors. Okay, for the chemoreceptors, sense organ like the nose, the tongue. Okay, those are the sense organs that contains chemoreceptors. Okay, because mainly chemicals, that's what they detect. So a sense organ is an organ, a sophisticated organ, a well-developed organ, an advanced organ that detects a thing. It detects something. Okay, it is sensitive to a particular stimulus. Okay, so let's look at the list of the sense organs. Okay, on the very extreme of the left side of this table we have on the screen, we have the list of the sense organs. We have about 5 sense organs. Okay, the 5 senses of man. We've treated that in English. Okay, the 5 senses of man. Okay, under the topic verbs without continuous. All right, so the first we have there, let's list first of all. We have the skin, we have the nose, we have the tongue, we have the eye, we have the ear. All right, so the other colon is the receptors. Okay, why the third colon is the function. Okay, why the fourth colon is the defects. Okay, these are what Jamb wants you to know. They specified it in their syllabus and they want you to know it. They want you to be accustomed to them because you are definitely going to see it in your Jamb exam. All right, so the first we pick skin. All right, skin contains what? Receptor. Okay, touch receptor, heat receptor, cold receptor, and pain receptor. Okay, all these, they are all the tactile receptors. Okay, so the touch receptor helps what? Detect what? Touch. Okay, it helps to what? Detect touch. Okay, the heat receptor helps to detect what? Heat. Okay, it helps to detect temperature. It helps you detect if something is hot or cold. Okay, that's why you can easily touch someone and say, oh, your body is hot, you're running temperature. All right, it also has to detect cold. We already spoke about that. And also pain receptors. Remember, the skin also has a receptor called pressure receptors. Okay, overstimulation of the pressure receptors stimulates the pain receptors. All right, so for example, this is not painful. Okay, this is a pressure. I'm applying pressure to my face. Okay, my facial skin. Okay, this is pressure. It's not painful. But if when I overstimulate this pressure receptor, I continue to apply more pressure, the pain receptor is what is stimulated. Okay, and is now that pressure is now experienced as pain. All right. So what is the function of skin as a sense organ? Tactile sensation, touch, all the sensation from touch. Okay, that's the primary function. All right, then what is the common defects in skin? You have various defects in skin, but the most common is burn. Okay, burn. Okay, burn is like an injury to the skin as a result of what? The transfer of heat. Okay, the transfer of heat energy. It might not be only heat energy. You have burns from chemical energy, like when you pour person acid. You also have burns from cold substances such as ice. Okay, ice burn too. You also have ice burn. All right, so that's that for that. You also have defects like eczema, ringworm, all those are skin, skin conditions, skin defects. All right, so that's that for that. The next we have here is nose. Nose as a sense organ contains what? Olfactory cells. Okay, and olfactory cells are a kind of chemical receptors. Okay, they help detect smell. Okay, I know you know the olfactory lobe in the brain. Okay, where you have the olfactory lobe. All right, so that is that for that. The olfactory cell is used to what? To detect what? Smell. Okay, the chemicals that enter goes through the olfactory bulb and it passes through the what? Through the nerve. Okay, the olfactory nerve, and heads straight to the what? To the brain, to be interpreted in the what? In the cerebrum. All right, the function of the nose is what? Basically to smell. That is the primary function of the nose. All right, we also have another one which is also the tongue. But before we move over to the tongue, we have something here called the defects of the nose. And the most common defect we have here for the nose is this anosmia. And we also have people congenitally born without nose string, no hole. Okay, no hole. They don't get hole for their nose. All right, so they breathe through the mouth. That's also a common defect in the nose. Okay, so moving over to the tongue as a sense organ, the tongue is used to detect what? Taste, because it contains what? Chemoreceptors that detects the chemical in food. Okay, or in whatever you ingest, whatever you put in your mouth. All right, and it is through a structure. There's a functional unit in the tongue that contains these chemoreceptors. It is called the taste buds. Okay, so there are several taste buds in the tongue. I think we have about 2 major taste buds in the tongue. The papilla. Okay, you have the filiform, you have the fungiform, and so on and so forth. All right, so the function of the tongue is what? To detect taste. The tongue detects sweet, bitter, sour, salty, and so on and so forth. All these things the tongue can detect them through what? The possession of taste bud and chemoreceptor. All right, and in your tongue there are different parts of your tongue that detects each of these tastes. There is a part of your tongue that detects sweet taste. There is a part for bitter taste. There's a part for sour, salty, and so on and so forth. We are going to look at that. Okay. One of the most common defects of the tongue is ageusia. Okay, and this ageusia is a kind of, ailment whereby, or it's a kind of defect whereby the person, if it tastes, that will give you sweet something, you will say it's tasteless. They will give you tasteless something, you will say it's sweet. Okay, so that's agousia. Then for the eye as a sense organ contains what? Photoreceptors. And there are two major types of photoreceptors. We have the rod that is formed by rhodopsin, and we have the cone. All right, the rod is responsible for what they call the black and white vision, or night vision at dim light. Okay, while the cone is responsible for colored vision. Jamb, the set question from here where they ask which is responsible for black and white vision, which is responsible for colored vision. So take note. All right, so what is the function of the eye? The function of the eye is for vision, to see, to detect the presence of light. That is the function of the eye. And what does it possess? What feature qualifies the eye to sense vision? What does it possess that allows this our eye? Why does our eye, why do our eyes detect photo? Why do our eye detect light? Why? Because it possesses a structure called the retina. Okay, the retina is photosensitive, and it converts, the information from light. It converts it to an information that can be transmitted to the brain through the optic nerve. Okay, so the brain now interprets the information transmitted through the optic nerve by the retina. All right, so what is the common defect of the eye? Long and short-sightedness. So these are the most common defects of the eye. Long and short-sightedness. We are going to emphasize more on this long and short-sightedness. Okay, for long-sightedness, you have a very short eyeball. Okay, so light ray focuses behind what is it called? Light ray focuses behind the retina. Okay, why? For short-sightedness, you have an entirely opposite of what I said. So the eyeball in short-sightedness is longer, and light ray focuses in front of the retina. All right. The final sensor that we have here is the ear, and the ear contains what? Receptors. Sonic receptors. Okay, and the sonic receptors helps to detect sound through some basilar membrane found in the cochlea. Okay, for hearing. The ear is not just only an organ for sensing. Okay, it's not just only an organ for hearing. It is also an organ for balance, and it helps us balance because it contains a structure called the semicircular canal. Okay, the semicircular canal is responsible for balance in the ear. All right, so the semicircular canal also makes up what they call the proprioceptor that helps us balance. Okay, take note of all of that. All right, so the function of the ear, we said that earlier, to hear. That is the major function of the ear, to hear. Okay, to detect the presence of sound and to also distinguish which sound is which sound. What sound is this? Where is this sound coming from? That is majorly the function of the brain, to interpret and tell us where the sound is coming from, what sound, the sound type, and so on and so forth. Also, the ear is an organ of balance. All right. The most common defect of the ear is otitis media or internal. It can be otitis media or otitis internal. All right, but just know otitis is one. Another one is deafness. All right, deafness. Now let's look at the defects of the eyes. Eye defects. I don't explain that for you small, but let's look at each of them one after the other. On the left side of the table is divided into 3 columns. On the left side of the table, we have the defects type. While in the middle column of the table, we have the causes of this particular defect. All right. While on the right side of the table, we have the correction of these defects. All right. On the left hand side of the table, all the defects listed there are 4 in number. The first is myopia, which means what? Short-sightedness. The second is hypermetropia or hyperopia, which means what? Long-sightedness or long sight. The third is astigmatism, which means what? The irregular curvature of the eyeball. Irregular curvature of the eyeball, particularly the cornea. Irregular curvature of the cornea. All right. So we have the 4th one, which is what? The cataract. Okay. Cataract is also an eye defect, whereby the lens becomes what? Cloudy. Okay. Light can't pass through the lens as it used to pass through it. All right. So that now leads to what? In turn leads to blurry vision. All right. So let's look at the cause of each. The first we have here is myopia, which is short-sightedness. When the eyeball is too long, and what happens? Ray of light focuses in front of the retina instead of on the retina. It focuses in front of the retina. All right. And you will now have to move closer to the object so that the more light ray can enter the eye, so that it can focus what? Closer to the retina. All right. You can see the abnormality. All right. So what is the correction? The correction is simple. Use concave lens. Remember, concave lens is what? Thin at the middle but thick at the what? Edges. All right. So that middle, because it's thin in the middle, it allows more light ray to enter the eye. Remember, it's a diverging lens, so it allows more light ray to enter through the what? Through the pupil, and so that the light ray can focus on the retina and not in front of the retina anymore. The next we have here is hypermetropia, which is called long-sightedness or long sight. It is also called hyperopia. All right. In this hypermetropia, what happens? What is wrong? It's because the eyeball is too short. When the eyeball is too short, ray of light, instead of focusing on the retina, it focuses behind the retina. So instead of ray of light to focus here, this one is the retina. Instead of ray of light to focus here, it focuses behind the retina. So such retina can detect the presence of photo or the presence of light that is coming from the object. All right. And so what happens? A person that has long-sightedness can't see objects placed in front of them because it's focused behind the retina. So what do? The correction is through what? Converging lens. All right, also called convex lens. Okay, converging lens that does what? that helps towards to converge what's the parallel ray of light, okay, so that it focuses on the retina. All right, remember the convex lens is a kind of lens that has a thicker center and a thinner what circumference. All right, so that thicker center prevents more light ray from over penetrating, okay, into the eye. So you know that if the light ray has more power to penetrate, it goes far in distance, okay, it goes farther in distance. But if there is no much much energy to penetrate deeper, it's not going to go that farther in distance, so forcing the light rays to focus inwards in the retina and not behind the retina anymore. All right, the third we have here is astigmatism, and astigmatism occurs as a result of what? Irregular curvature of the cornea. What is the cornea? This part that you can see, this obvious part that you can see here is called the cornea. Okay, what you can see in front of your eye here is called what? The cornea. And also this particular astigmatism, because of the irregular curvature of the cornea, light ray is not focused to the retina. The lens is not able to focus light ray to the retina, on the retina. So the light ray is not focused in different parts of the eye, inside the eye, but different parts. Light ray will just focus on different parts. So that affects what? Vision. And it is what? It is corrected with what? Cylindrical lens. It can be what? Planoconcave, and so on and so forth. All right, but just know that it's cylindrical lens. All right, the lens is like this, a form of cylinder. It might be planoconcave or planoconvex. The final one we have here is cataract, and cataract occurs as a result of what? A cloudy lens. So when the lens is cloudy, light ray can't pass through. Okay, a lens that was once, transparent turns translucent. And you know what a translucent substance is? A translucent substance is a substance that permits, okay, some degree of light ray to pass through it. Okay, it partially allows just small light ray to pass through it. Okay, so most translucent objects are used as reflectors. Okay, they are used as reflectors, as non-luminous objects. All right, because they are non-luminous. All right, so that's that. What is the method of correcting the cataract? It's surgery. Remember, the lens in the human eye is a crystalline lens. Okay, a crystalline lens, while the lens in the camera is a plastic lens. So when a surgery is carried out in the eye, cataract surgery, to correct cataract, they remove parts of all the lens in the human eye, depending on the extent of the the damage, and they replace it with a plastic or artificial lens. Okay, within 2-3 days, the patient is ready to see, and the cataract stuff is over. The patient can see, at least to some extent. Okay, there's usually a difference within 2 to 3 days post-operation. Now let's look at the structure of the skin. What we have here is the structure of the skin, cross section of the skin. When you hear cross section, what does that mean? Cross section means that you cut something. It's just like you carry orange now, you cut am for the center, you can't see inside the orange. So you see all the structure when they inside the orange. That's cross section. So this is the cross section of the skin. So the skin cut. I want to see what we have inside. Okay, all these things where you see where grow come out for here now, hair. Okay, the grow come out for the hair, and you can see where the hair arises from. Okay, the hair arises from here. Where it arises from the subcutaneous. Okay, the subcutaneous, the fatty layer of the skin. The hair follicle attaches to the fatty layer of the skin, and you are going to see a gland that attaches to hair follicle. It's called what? The sebaceous gland. And what does the sebaceous gland do? The sebaceous gland helps to lubricate the skin. It helps to lubricate and nourish the skin, preventing the skin from drying off. It produces a oily substance called sebum that helps to lubricate the skin, lubricate the hair, and so on and so forth. Okay, preventing the skin from drying up. All these are blood vessels. This thing will be like 3 here. Now blood vessels there be. Okay, blood vessels. Okay, you have blood vessels like continuous artery, continuous nerve. You also have nerve close by to it. Okay, you also have the Pacinian nerve. But let's forget about that. Let's just look at the major thing that you have to know for your level. All right, so the skin is divided into 3. The structure of the skin. You have the epidermis and the dermis. So the epidermis is the upper part. From here now to this place, will be like www like this. From here go up is called the epidermis. Then from here go down, everything is called the dermis. And the dermis is divided into 2. You have the hypodermis, which contains the fat layer called subcutaneous. Okay, look at the hypodermis. The hypodermis starts from here. Okay, this place that you have fat tubules. The hypodermis starts here down. But just know that the hypodermis is part of the dermis. The skin is mainly divided into 2. You have the upper epidermis and the lower dermis, or the outer epidermis and the inner dermis. All right, so all these holes you see on top here, all these are sweat pores. These are where you sweat. Okay, these are where you sweat. Remember, the skin plays an important role in maintaining temperature. All right, so all these are nerves: cutaneous nerve, Pacinian nerve, the nerve for touch. You have Messinia. Okay, you have various. You have about 3 or 4 nerves. Okay, responsible for what? For touch. Okay, remember the skin is a sense organ too. All right, so that's that for that. So you have sweat gland. Okay, look at the sweat gland. The sweat gland attaches to the fat layer of the skin. All right, so this sebaceous gland, you can be asked a question: where is the sebaceous gland located in the skin? Where will you say? Is it located in the epidermis or the dermis? It's located in the dermis. Okay, they can also ask you, where is the sweat gland located to? Where is it located? Is it in the epidermis or the dermis? In the what? It's located in the dermis. The nerves of the skin, where are they located? Okay, and so on and so forth. So they can ask you anything. Okay, they can ask you anything. There are other stuff to label here, but for this level, let's forget about that. You don't need that. Okay, you don't need that right now. Let's move on to the next. This is the diagram of the tongue, and I told you that we are going to look at the parts of the tongue that detects the various tastes: sweet, bitter, salty, sour, and what's the final one? Sweet, bitter, salty, sour. Okay, 3 of them. Okay, bitter taste. Jamb the set question for you. Where? Bitter taste. The part of the tongue that detects bitter taste, the receptors are found where? The taste bud you have back at the back of the tongue. Just know that anything bitter are for back of the tongue. Back. Then sour, now the middle of the tongue, the center of the tongue, the 2 sides of the center of the tongue. Look at them. Sour, 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 sour. Salty is what? The 2 sides in front of the tongue. Alright? The 2 sides in front of the tongue. Use that to detect what? Salty. That's where you have the salty receptor, the salty taste bud. Why? Front is sweet. Just know back bitter, front sweet. The 2 middle, you have sour first, coming from the back. You have sour, then you have what? You have salty. Alright, let's move on to the next. This is the diagram of the human eye. Cross-section of the human eye. We already discussed what cross-section is. Alright, so you already understand what cross-section is. This is the cross-section of the human eye. And we have to label it together. Alright, so this thing we have here is called the lens. Okay, this lens contracts and relaxes, or thickens and lightens, depending on the amount of light ray that is entering the eye. Okay, depending on the amount of light that is entering through the what? The eye. Remember, the iris, this part, this thing, will be like broom here, so it's called the iris, all these things. It controls the opening of the pupil. The pupil is the hole that you have in front of this your eye. Wait, that place where light really pass, the enter. Then be your pupil. Okay, so the iris is responsible for the control of the what? The opening of the iris. Okay, so depending on the light ray available, that's what is going to determine the size of the pupil. If the light coming to your eye is very high, okay, if the intensity of the light is very high, your iris is going to contract to close up your pupil, okay, to protect your retina, because high intensity light can destroy your retina. That's why if you wear that the word now, you're going to look waiting wear that the word. After some time, you notice you know the see way again, because it almost they condemn your retina for you. So there is the extent to which the retina can take. That's why we have these 2 protective structure in the gateway that controls the amount of light ray that enters the eye. The first one you have there is the iris, and it was the opening which controls the opening of the pupil. Okay, the second one we have is what? The lens. The lens that thickens or contracts or thins out, depending. If it wants more light to enter, it thins out. If it wants more, if it wants less light to pass through it to go to the retina, it thickens. Okay, preventing too much light from penetrating the eye and going to the retina. All right, and this the contraction and relaxation, or the thickening and lightening, or the lens is controlled by a muscle called ciliary muscle. This is the muscle here. Okay, ciliary muscle. That's what controls. Okay, that's what controls the the contraction and relaxation of the lens, or controls the thinning and the thickening of the lens. Okay, we have a structure here called the canal of Schlemm. This canal of Schlemm is responsible for the draining. Okay, the drainage of the fluid found in this portion of the eye. You see this front chamber of the eye. It's called the front chamber of the eye, where you have the pupil, the lens, just here like this. There's a kind of fluid here. It is called the aqueous humor. Okay, the aqueous humor. Okay, while here, this big side, okay, that's from back of the lens, you have the what? The vitreous. Look at it, vitreous humor. All right, so it is that in that canal of Schlemm that helps to drain it. It ensures that the pressure in the front part of the eye is kept steady and is moderate. Okay, it's not high, it's not low. All right, it's within the normal range. All right, to prevent high intraocular pressure. All right, so we have the sclera. Okay, the sclera is the outermost part of the eye. This part like this, round, is called the sclera, the outermost part of the eye, the first layer of the eye. But when you come front of the eye here, this part we just see for your eye is called the cornea. This exposed part. Okay, here is the cornea. Okay, look at it, labeled the cornea, this front. Okay, the cornea is able to take in oxygen from the atmosphere. Okay, and it respires on its own. It doesn't depend on the lung to respire. Okay, so the cornea take in oxygen from the atmosphere, okay, to respire. All right, so I already talked about the pupil. This thing what you see for here, so now your eyelid. This one with here, so now your eyelash. All right, so the second layer of the eye is the vascular part of the eye. When I say vascular, it means that there are blood vessels there. It is through that place that it receives blood, okay, nutrients contain blood, okay, through this structure here. It's called the choroid, and it's reddish brown in color because it is highly vascular. It contains blood vessel. Okay, it is the choroid that brings it brings blood to the eye. Okay, brings nutrient to the eye and takes away its waste. All right, then the innermost part of the eye, this inner line is called the retina, and the retina contains cone and rod. The most sensitive part of the retina is the fovea centralis, and it's located here, close to the macula. The fovea centralis, that is the most sensitive part of the retina. All right. Then this thing we have here, this thing like this, like branch of trees and all these things, is the optic nerve going straight to the brain. All right. We are done with the diagram of the eye. Any other thing? I told you that we have a fluid at the back chamber of the eye. This chamber, so it's called the vitreous humor. For the front chamber of the eye here, that's just behind this pupil here, in front of the lens, we have the aqueous humor. Okay, and both of them helps maintain the pressure of the eye. The aqueous humor help to maintain the pressure of the front chamber of the eye, while the vitreous humor help to maintain pressure in the behind the eye, and also gives the eyeball its shape. Okay, it gives the eyeball its shape, maintains the shape of the eye too, not just the pressure. Okay, it also maintains the shape of the eye. All these are places Jamb usually sets questions from. All right, that's that for the eye. Let's look at the diagram of the ear. This one is the diagram of the ear, the cross section of the ear. Okay, and this place is your external ear. It's called the external ear. The one you can see outside is your external ear. The external ear terminates at the eardrum or tympanic membrane. Can be called eardrum or tympanic membrane. All right. So the external ear is from here, this place that you can see, down to this to this tympanic membrane. That's the So the tympanic membrane is part of the external ear. Okay. So this one is external ear. Then the middle ear is where you have the ear ossicles. It's only the ear ossicles that makes up the middle ear. Okay. The ear ossicles are tiny bones, 3 bones. Okay. And it is arranged in order. Arranging it in order, Jamb the ask question well for here is if you are coming from the external ear now, you call it go inside. The first way you go see now, malleus. The second way you go see now, incus. The third way you go see now, stapes. And stapes is the smallest bone in the body. It's known as the smallest bone found in the human body, located here in the middle ear. All right. So the malleus is also called hammer. Okay. The malleus is also called hammer because it's hammer-like. Okay. It is when it receives vibration from this, this eardrum. Okay, that vibration enables it to hammer. Okay, to hammer the incus. Okay, the incus looks like a hand V. It's also called hand V. Okay, hammers the incus, and the incus transfers this wave, okay, to the stape. And the stape does what? It transfers the wave to where? To the oval window. Okay, oval window. And the oval window connects what? The cochlea. The oval window connects the cochlea. And the cochlea is the functional unit of the ear, the major functional unit of the ear. That's where sound is, converted into a nerve impulse, okay, to be transmitted through the auditory nerve to the brain, or vestibulocochlear nerve to the brain, straight up. Okay, so what is the movement of sound wave in the ear? Okay, sound enters through the external ear. Okay, it vibrates the tympanic membrane, eardrum, and when it vibrates the tympanic membrane, this tympanic membrane sends that vibration to the malleus, and the malleus is hammer-like. The malleus or transmits this vibration to the incus or hanvi. Okay, the hanvi sends this vibration to the stape, and the stape is also called stirrup because it's like a stirrup, like one kind of rope. Okay, so the stape connects to the round window. That round window is where the stape connects or articulates with the oval window. Okay, that oval window is the beginning of the cochlea, the part that is connected to the middle ear. So, and the cochlea, there is a membrane in the cochlea called basilar membrane. Okay, is able to is able to transcribe the information. It changes that vibration to nerve impulse, and it sends it to the brain through the auditory nerve or vestibulocochlear nerve. All right. So the middle ear stops at stape. Then the inner ear starts from where? From the cochlea. So all this semicircular canal, cochlea, all this one are inner ear. So the SS sound leaves the ear through what? A place called round window. This opening with the ear is called round window. That is where SS, SS sound passes to leave the middle ear. Okay, and it enters the eustachian tube. Okay, it enters the eustachian tube. That's why sometimes when you feel like you can't hear again, you can't hear properly. When you try to swallow, you swallow. Okay, it helps you clear. You clear that SS sound that you have in your SS sound built up in your middle ear. Okay, and it enters this round window. Then is eliminated through this eustachian tube. Okay, it enters the eustachian tube. The eustachian tube is connected to your throat. That is why it's called ear, nose, and throat. So that's why when you swallow, it clears off that SS air. All right, and you can't hear again better once more. Okay, so these 3 structures or these 3 bones that makes up the middle ear is known as ear ossicles. They are collectively called ear ossicles: malleus, incus, and stape. Malleus, incus, and stape. So in this semicircular canal, you have a structure called you have the sacule, you have the ampulla. Okay, you have the sacule, you have the ampulla, and you have the utricle. 3 of them, sacule, ampulla, and utricle. That is what makes up this semicircular canal. Okay, it's 3-sided, and semicircular canal is the structure for what? Balance in the ear. Okay, that's what enables balance. It receives positioning signal from the 3 corners of the body, because one is for one corner, another is for one corner. Semicircular canal is divided into 3. It has 3 arms. Okay, that's what it uses to detect, detect position and ensure adjustments through balance. All right. So you can see how it was divided here. From here is called the outer ear or external ear. Then from here, middle ear. Some part of the semicircular canal enters for the middle ear, but the middle ear is mostly the ear ossicles. That's what you have there. Then the inner ear is what majorly the cochlea. All right. This external ear is also called what? The pinna. Okay, and in the pinna here is called the lobule. Okay, this one is called the pinna, and it's cartilaginous. It's made of cartilage, mostly cartilage. All right, so let's move on to the next. Now we are looking at a diagrammatic representation of correction of defects in the eye. Okay, this one is the normal healthy eye, but let's just look at the refractive error correction. We already talked about this before. Okay, you correct astigmatism with spherocylindrical lens. I told you before that is a cylindrical lens you use to what, to correct it. They usually add more than one lenses. Okay, you correct myopia with what, concave lens. Okay, that's a diverging lens. Then you correct what, you correct hyperopia or hypermetropia with what, a convex lens. Okay, this one is short-sightedness, this one is long-sightedness. There's also an age-related eye defect called presbyopia, whereby the lens of the eye becomes because of aging, the lens degenerates. Okay, and image appear what, blurry. Okay, so it's called presbyopia. Okay, and it's usually corrected with plano-convex, plano-concave lens, prism binoculars. So it's a mixture. They bring various lenses together to correct the defects. So someone can also have myopia and hypermetropia. Someone can have long-sightedness and have short-sightedness too. Yes, so those kinds of refractive errors or eye defects are corrected using more than one lenses. Okay, so you use more than one lens to correct it. You might bring concave, other than joint concave. That makes some people, their glass where they wear, okay, they are medicated glass, they are correction glass. It dey thicker. You see person go wear glass go big like this, go dey very thick. It's because they had to what, mesh more than one lens together to what, to ensure that the correction is what, attained. Now let's look at the most common defects of the ear. Okay, the defect of the ear, the first one is deafness. We already looked at this before, and deafness occurs as a result of damaged cochlear or damaged vestibulocochlear nerve or damaged auditory nerve. Okay, and the correction of deafness is through hearing aid. There's a kind of hearing aid commonly called cochlear implants. Okay, they implant it into the cochlea and it helps to what, it attracts sound, and it helps to what, it helps the cochlea recreate that sound, redefine that sound, refine that sound in a version that the brain can interpret as sound. All right, so another one again is ear infection. Okay, and it's treated with what, antibiotics. Remember, infection are treated with antibiotics or anti-infectives.